When there's a clear number one guy, whether it be an alpha wide receiver or a worse running back or a tight end who plays in a lot of 11 personnel, it's pretty easy to decide what to do with them, how much you want to spend for them, and whether you want them on your team. It gets harder when the situations that they're in get a little murkier, when there isn't a clear 1 or 1A or not even a clear path at all. Brian Hartman is joining me today to look at some of those situations and talk about how he evaluates them not only as individual players, but as actual rooms, the running back room, the wide receiver room, etc. Because sometimes you do have to run into the burning building. And we'll be doing that next on Dynasty Compass. Welcome to Dynasty Compass. I'm your host, Jeff Blaylock, the other Jeff B from Football Guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to the show, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on Apple or Spotify or another of your favorite podcast platforms. You tuning in and commenting and liking, subscribing, all those things make sure this show grows, gets in front of more audiences, and enables me to bring on great guests like the one I have today. We've got Brian Hartman here joining me. Brian, thanks so much for stopping by, taking the time, and welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeff. Appreciate you having me on. I'm super excited. Get to talk some fantasy football, of course, because, we're only 15 Sundays away. This is the vital time. We have to start it up now.
That's right. If you have not, and particularly in Dynasty, if you've not been paying attention yet, then you should definitely get on that horse now. But it's probably likely that if you have not been paying attention to that yet, you are not watching this either. So this is really a show for folks who want that leg up in their Dynasty leagues. And so let's just jump on in here. Now, you were recently doing some drafts with Jake Cieli, who we've had on the show. And you did a different one with Andrew Cooper, who we've also had on the show, and Chuck Bass and some other guys. And I apologize to those guys for leaving their names out. Maybe you could fill them in. But the thing about those that caught my attention was that you weren't drafting players. You were drafting rooms. Like instead of Jeremiah Love, you would be drafting the Arizona Cardinals running back room. And I only say that because Arizona's the first team. It's the depth chart I have on the other screen over here. You probably didn't draft them if you were doing top teams. But why did you have that kind of framing? Why are we looking at the room instead of just the individual players?
A lot of it was just framing our out, or just the outlook that we have on these teams, on these players. We have so many drafts, so much content of the top 13, top 10, top 15 running backs. We know who those are. And is it exciting to do a draft of the, running back 16 through 30? Not really. That really just doesn't bring people in. So I was like, all right, let's mix it up a little bit. And let's talk about the totality of these running back rooms. You may have Jahmyr Gibbs, who is one of the best running backs in the league. But when you stack up his room to some of these other rooms, his room looks pretty bleak. You got Isaiah Pacheco back there. That's not exactly getting us excited. That's not somebody you're clamoring to have on your Dynasty rosters anymore. So I was like, let's mix it up a little bit and let's see which overall teams. As you have in redraft, you have a defense and special team. You have one slot devoted to the entire section. Well, let's look at it that way. So it's kind of how we tore it down. We did pass catchers, so wide receivers and tight end rooms, and then the running backs as well in that other draft.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really easy for us as Dynasty managers to look just at the individuals, but not so much a cohesive room. And as we're getting into a world where, sadly, 11 personnel is not what's used almost exclusively, where you had 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back. Everybody had a role. It was very easy. Now we've got committees almost everywhere in almost every position. So when you're just looking at Jahmyr Gibbs or at Jeremiah Love or at just any particular player and not the rest of the talent around him, what are you missing as a Dynasty manager when you're doing that?
I think it's all the variables that we kind of take for granted. When we looking at some of those things, absolutely. Who wouldn't want Jahmyr Gibbs? Who wouldn't want Bijan Robinson on their team? Of course, it's a staple there. But not everybody gets that. Only one team gets that player, and most teams don't have the capital to go make a move for those types of players typically. So, how do you beat that? Omarion Hampton. I love Omarion Hampton. I'd kill to have Omarion Hampton on my team. For sure. Would I trade for Omarion Hampton? Probably not. There's too much hype. He's going to be at that peak of that performance. But you know what I can trade for? For a lot of the same reasons I like Omarion Hampton, it's the offense, it's the play caller, it's the team. Well, I can go get Keaton Mitchell for a third. Now, am I guaranteeing the same output as Omarion Hampton? Absolutely not. But people get hurt all the time. Things happen all the time. And that's kind of where I look for my opportunities. Like, all right, I need some running back depth. Well, maybe I don't want to go shoot for a starter that's looking good. Let me go find the next best situation, and I'll get the next guy up, somebody who's flashed it. And, Keaton Mitchell is just an example. I bought him with third-round picks quite a bit in my Dynasty leagues this offseason, just for the what if. Why not?
Yeah, and especially if they're almost a plug and play, he runs the same kinds of style, can be put in the same kinds of offensive plays, the same scheme, maybe not to the same results because the same talent's not there,
sure.
But you're not, trying to then change your entire offense because your second running back has nothing compared to your first running back. So the good things to kind of keep in mind there. So let's just get right to running backs room. I mean, when you're looking at the room as a whole, so all the running backs together on a team, what are you looking for? What sort of defines whether that room is good or shaky or yuck?
We found ourselves in that draft kind of having to identify, all right, do we have an elite talent situation or do we have a multitude of talent? Because that's where it got kind of dicey. There's teams where it's a huge teardrop between running back 1 to the running back 2, 3, 4 on the team. And then, like you brought up Arizona. Arizona actually, weirdly enough, in both those drafts got taken in the top 7. Oh. Because why? They've got 4 capable running backs here. They have Trey Benson still there, who everybody's still wondering. That's the low man on the totem pole at that point. That's not bad for a 4th running back. You still have James Conner there. You brought in Tyler Algier, who they paid a decent amount of money in free agency, and then also you have Jeremiah Love, who they took there in the top 3 of the NFL draft. So like that team was jumped off the page for me when I was looking at it. I was like, honestly, if one guy goes down, I'm still pretty happy with the running back room. If 2 guys go down, I don't hate it. Worst situations. We saw them last year putting together Bam Knight and Michael Carter and Amari DiMercado. That's not the depth we're looking for in some of these running back rooms.
Yeah, exactly, man. I mean, it's so basically the situations that are most maddening for dynasty managers may make the best rooms if you're looking at them in that kind of light.
Yeah, Commanders is one that kind of jumps out. We have 5, I don't want to say viable pieces on that team, but we have 5 running backs that could see decent touches this year. Who do we want to bet on? I don't know. Do you want to go with the pass catcher with Shaun White, or do you want to go with hopefully the touchdown thumper in Bill and Ja'Cory Cross-Game-Merritt? So you're not really having to pay up for a lot of this, but do I look at this team as a top half team, a top third as far as offenses go? Do I like the offensive line? These are kind of the variables I start like pulling apart, feeling like, all right, where can I buy just a piece, just a part of that offense, whether it be one of those or Katron Allen was their rookie, I believe, that they took.
Yep, that's correct. Yeah, I've actually got 5 guys in that room ranked in my dynasty rankings, which is unusual to have that many running backs, but none of them are above 39. So Ja'Cory Cross-Game-Merritt Bill is my RB 39. Rashad White is 52. Katron's 43. Jerome Ford is 94. And Robert Henry is 97. He probably won't make the team and will disappear soon enough. But yes, that is if you just are taking whatever running back is out there at any given moment and getting points for it, I think that's a great kind of setup because that's a great committee. If you're looking for just one of them, however, that could be kind of complicated, and we'll get into that here in a little bit with some of these murky rooms. But I know that from those other couple shows, and you've mentioned a couple times, you sort of put tiers not only within the room, but the rooms against each other. Can you talk a little bit about how you were dividing the different rooms apart to have ones that were better and ones that weren't?
Yeah, that was the hard part with some of these teams that are very, I don't want to say fragile, top heavy, but like, for the wide receiver position, for instance, Seattle. You got JSN, guy just lit the world on fire, went out there and just, made a lot of money. He's looking great. But what are we looking at with wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4? There is a huge tier break. Now, would you rather have a JSN and Rashid Shaheed and Cooper Kupp? Or would you rather have like the Buccaneers, where maybe they don't have an elite guy, but they have an ascending Emeka Egbuka, Chris Godwin, who's no slouch, and hopefully he's still got at least one more year in him. You've got Jalen McMillan, you have Ted Hurst, you have Tez Johnson. Yeah, so many different options there. So like you kind of have to weigh, how much does depth play into those situations? So that's kind of where we had to tier it out. I had a handful of those tiers where, all right, you guys have depth and great talent. That's going to be my tier 1. My tier 2s was usually a lot of those high end talents that with zero depth, and then the tier 3 guys, it seemed to trend more for overall depth, but they didn't have that superstar. They didn't have that guy that's pushing you over the edge. But then you have teams like. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. I wish I need to pull up the list to just see what we had. It got like a little crazy there. Some feelings got hurt, and there were some teams that may have been a little higher than they should have.
Well, that happens sometimes. We plant flags on the ground, and occasionally that flag goes through somebody else, and they scream about it.
Yeah, we like to say we're not emotional here. We're just playing this game. It's all analytics. It's all what we're seeing with our. No. We're tugging on the heartstrings when we play this game.
Yeah, everybody is somebody's mother, right? I mean, you can't talk. You talk badly about somebody, you can just see a parent or two of theirs just shaking their head at you, like, no.
100%.
So let's kind of look at some of these sort of situations where we don't have the luxury of being able to take all of the Arizona Cardinals running backs, for example, as a block, and that they count however they distribute themselves. We have to actually start picking individual guys, whether it's to be an RB1 or 2, or as you say, like a Keaton Mitchell type, that they're on our bench and they come in if somebody gets hurt ahead of them. So just kind of start wherever on the map you'd like on here, and let's kind of talk through some of these running back rooms. We'll get to the other positions in a little bit. And let's just see if we can get some guidance for dynasty managers who are looking at these and going, what the hell am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think none more so than Pittsburgh right now. You've got Jaylen Warren, you have Rico Dowdle, you got Heinrich, the Navy, the midshipman that got drafted, and that's the fun tweet going around. He has the highest draft capital as a 7th round pick. The other 2 guys are UDFAs. Obviously, we're not going to use draft capital here as a deciding factor on what we want, but we know we've got an old quarterback there behind center. What do? They like to check it down. So, like, you try and look at the two and, like, all right, well, Jaylen Warren, that fits his mold. Well, over the last 2 years, Rico Dowdle actually has more receptions than Jaylen Warren. So just to muddy up it more, you can't even look at it like you got your thumper and you got your receiving back. It should be how it lays out. But it's Pittsburgh. So I don't know, like, as a dynasty manager, I have a good chunk of Rico Dowdle just – it kind of fell into some of my rosters, and I am struggling to figure out how to lean on these players. Like, you can't really hope. You can hope for higher than an RB3 output, but I think these guys just have to be locked in as those like flex play RB3s.
Yeah, I've got Warren at RB29 in my dynasty rankings, and Dowdle at RB36. So I'm right there. They're RB3 type guys. Warren is listed first right now because he's first on their depth chart, but we know that doesn't really mean anything. And then we did not mention a guy a second ago who is at least still on the roster, and that's Caleb Johnson, who I know a lot of dynasty managers. Yeah, you forgot. A lot of folks have forgotten about him by this point, but there were a number of people, myself included, who thought he was he was at least going to be decent. Drafted him and then watched him go straight into the doghouse from which he is yet to emerge. Perhaps with the new coaching staff, he gets a fresh start with his old team. So that's a fourth guy who's there as well. And then they also picked up Travis Homer as a depth piece. That's another guy that sort of muddies up this third down role out there. So how do you really see this usage shaking out with this room with these now 5 guys that we've mentioned?
As far as projections go, I'm leaning into majority 80% of the work going to Rico and Warren. Right now, I do kind of have it looking more as Rico is the bruising back. You get there in the first couple downs. Jaylen Warren comes in there at third down. We did get a lot of reports from Aaron Rodgers wanting to get the ball more to Jaylen Warren last year and the dump-offs. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we saw Gainwell lead the team in receptions, and he kind of slid into that. So I'm hoping that maybe there is that natural chemistry. Aaron Rodgers, what he wants, he kind of gets in the way of like player personnel. He is being reunited with McCarthy. McCarthy's got, he's got that played with Rico just a couple seasons ago in Dallas and was successful. And, say what you will against the talent that he played in those 2 games. He looked incredible in those back-to-back games last year where he breaking 200 all-purpose yards in both of them. So it's hard for me to navigate away from it. But both of these, I don't want to, at least in the redraft sense, I don't want to invest a lot of capital in, but I want to taste. I want a little bit. I want, could this offense be better? I don't know. Maybe we're just post-Tomlin era. Maybe we can finally break the mold, but watch, they're finally going to finish below 500 just to just to really cause problems for us.
Yeah, there we go. A nice solid 8-9 season that is really nothing in either direction. That'd be perfect. It'd be fitting. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm kind of leaning a little more toward Dowdle, even though I've got Warren ranked higher. Dynasty, we're not just looking at a single season. We are looking out several years. Warren's a little bit younger, as I recall. And so that, to me, has got a little bit longer-term stability, the tails kind of being the difference there. But Dowdle is unquestionably talented. As a Cowboys fan, I watched him for several seasons doing very well. You mentioned that historic run of a couple of weeks he had last year. I got the privilege of facing him both weeks, lots of times. So I was on the receiving end of that in a number of leagues. That was a lot of fun. So if you had to pick between choose one or the other for Dynasty, who would you take?
I think I'm taking Dowdle. I think I can get him a little cheaper. Like you said, there's going to be the age bias on him, and I think he's got a higher upside. I don't ever, if something puts one or both of those guys in the position, I think Dowdle could give us a top 12 finish with, the work, the right. Productive team with the touchdowns and stuff like that. I don't know if Warren ever actually can, his chances of that ceiling hitting, I think, are a lot lower than Dowdle's would be.
And even if Aaron Rodgers makes a concerted effort to get the ball to Warren in dump-offs this year, this would be the only year that's likely to happen because the new quarterback coming in, whether they're already on the roster, they're drafted, or they're signed later, may have a completely different outlook on how they want to proceed. It may have less power over the purse strings and the play calling and the ownership that Aaron Rodgers seems to have there in Pittsburgh. Who's next? Where do you want to go next on our map?
Oh man, let's talk about the Browns because this one I've statted out the team, but I every time I open up my projections, I look straight at this one because I don't know what I want to do. Honestly, I've got Deshaun Watson doing 4 games. I've got Shadur doing 7 games. I've got Gabriel because
right.
We don't know, and it's almost, I feel insulting to try and predict it, especially because I found such a huge difference between Deshaun Watson, his liking and tendencies to wide receivers versus Shador's and his tendencies with Fannin and the tight end. So I'm like, does that play into it? We've got new coaching, new scheme. Fannin has evolved. The wide receivers now young, so I don't know what to do. In this running back room, he's really just staring at me because I kind of faded Judkins a good amount last year, which based on the talent was wrongdoing. But my reason behind it was because this is going to be a subpar team. This is not going to be a team putting them in position to score a lot. And that's where Judkins is going to excel. He's not going to be that huge pass catching guy. He's not going to have the ceiling with those numbers. He needs the touchdowns to really push himself into that elevated category. And I see a similar situation. I don't see this offense being great. And they just shipped off their best player. So now the defense just took a step back too, which means controlling the clock, these 1-score games where they can run the ball out a little bit, they might be waning a little bit. So I do, and I like Sampson quite a bit as far as just in redraft this year, just to start off hot. Judkins, I thought he was going to have a slow start. We're already getting camp hype videos, so maybe we're going to have to back that down a little bit. But I don't find myself wanting to invest in this. And if you're a dynasty player that's already invested in Judkins, you kind of have to sit in it because I do see a higher ceiling. I see the value rising over the next 6, 18, 24 months. But I'm not going to dare lose out on that. I'm not going to get scared and move on from something that could be great in a couple of seasons.
I think I'm with you on that. That if you've got Judkins and you have managed through your initial acquisition, there was a chance he wasn't even going to sign his rookie contract last year. There's a chance he wouldn't be able to be playing last year, at least early on. He was able to do both of those things. So if you were able to handle that, then I think you're in a good position to just sit on Judkins for now. Sampson, though, I find interesting. I have him as my running back 47, so right at the bottom of RB4 range in Dynasty, specifically because of some of the murkiness that you're talking about. But I also just liked what Sampson brings to the table.
For sure.
As a more versatile, I won't say necessarily more versatile than Judkins, but more versatile than your typical second running back is going to be in the NFL. So, Judkins, I think, is at a price point I wouldn't acquire now. And of course, I also have a generally a no knuckleheads policy, so I'm not not inclined to pick him up anyway. But I will give some grace there. Sampson, however, seems like almost, I don't know about an ideal pickup, but surely cheap enough probably that this is somebody you could put on your roster. What would be your thoughts on that, and what would be kind of the price you're willing to pay to get Sampson on your team?
I really wouldn't want to pay much more than a third. If you're doing a third in another player, maybe 2/3. If it's a second in this 26 class, sure. The things that I have traded 26 seconds for, the varying array is some of, wow, I can't believe I pulled this off, to wow, I might as well just dropped that pick. It's incredible just the value seen across the leagues. But Sampson is still at this day only 21 years old. So you've got the young, the prime of those years. He's just opening into that. And does he ultimately have a ceiling that Judkins goes down? Do I think that he has the same ceiling as we were just talking with Rico Dowdle? Absolutely not. They're different players, different backs. This guy's barely 200 pounds. He's 5'8". But what he can do on a team that's probably going to be pretty bad, that's going to be behind, that's going to have to play some catch up, that has some rookie receivers. I like his patch sketching. I like the role that he's coming off of. The Browns have Judkins. He's coming off a major injury. There's no reason they should run him into the ground this season. They should make sure it's a nice 65-35, 60-40 split, some sort of split where they're getting some work out of Sampson. Because Sampson, they took him to the top of the fourth round, which most years we kind of scoff at, but last year's draft, that was right there by Cam Scatterville, right by Tootin. Right. Those are other players that we have high, we're marking high. So if you're just looking at draft capital on this one, I think that's kind of a poor way to look at it, because this guy, I do think he has a ceiling. And we saw flashes of it last year with first game. 8 catches, 8 targets, 8 catches for 64 yards. Receivers can't pull that off sometimes.
Not in Cleveland.
that's for sure.
Not in Cleveland. Where to next, man?
I need help with this one too. The Seattle, man.
This is a fascinating one for me too, and for dynasty managers who are dealing with how high in the first round are they willing to spend a pick for Jadarian Price.
And the cautionary tale that I feel, I've been playing Dynasty, I think 7-ish seasons. It took me a little bit before I finally found a league and splurged and came into it. And the consensus that you usually hear is you draft for value and you trade for priority kind of a thing, or trade for need. You don't draft a running back just because you need a running back. And I heard the rule. I didn't follow the rule. It came back and bit me. So I'm pretty good about taking value here. But this year, it seems pretty consensus with in single quarterback drafts. People are like, yeah, 105, 106, take whoever you want. Just take whoever you want. It's no big deal. And it's hard to say, the 106 and the 112 are the same value, because they're not, but they kind of are, because it's a crapshoot at this point. So I don't know. I have zero price. I don't know what to do. When we did this episode ranking the running back rooms, Seattle got brought up as the worst running back room, and this was post NFL draft. And we brought them up as this might be the worst running back room in the league. So best ball, I've taken Emmanuel Wilson. That's really the only running back I've taken so far, because I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I'm with you. Actually, if I'm sitting there at 105, 106, 107, and I can't move that pick because nobody else wants to move into that position, which is what happens. I actually, in Superflex, find myself taking Ty Simpson, because why not? Why not? I don't want to spend dynasty capital on a running back who may have a path to lots of touches one time, which is kind of where Price is right now, given just the health of Zach Charbonnet. He's basically walking into the ability to have 200 touches this year if he can do something with the first 50 that he gets.
Yeah.
I love Wilson as kind of a stash, someone you can bring in, because I don't see Price being an 80-20 kind of guy. So there's going to have to be somebody else. And Holani, to me, is unfortunately probably your goal line wrecker. So he's going to vulture the touchdowns from these other two in short yard situations. But I like Wilson a lot. And but apparently not very much, because he's my running back 79. So we may have to take another look at that in the context of this year. But of course, you say I'm looking out several years. And Price I have up reasonably high. He's my running back 22, and that is just because I tend to weight this year about 44% of total value, and at least at this point this year looks like he's a running back kind of guy. And if you're a contender, you've got a late first pick, and Jadarian Price is sitting there. I think somebody to pick up because he's got that volume at least this year.
Yeah, it feels like it's one of those, like, you could do a lot worse in that situation than do that. It just, you have to understand what you're doing. If you're taking him and hoping he is your RB2 and he's going to help be a linchpin in your season, that's dangerous. That's where you need to start dropping, picking up all these Keaton Mitchells and these third round guys, just because you're going to need some plug and play action. We might get some sustainability out of the Seahawks running back room, but I'm putting no faith in getting consistent work from them. Despite that, Super Bowl champ, great defense, probably falling in the Clinton Kubiak ways of multiple running backs. Call me crazy. I don't know if I want to mess with it this year.
Yeah, I mean, they were so successful at it last year. Of course, they'll be successful at it this year, even though they've got different people, because they lost Walker and Charbonnet's on the shelf. So, of course, two new people will come in and do exactly what they did last year, right? I mean, that's how this works.
Yeah. I mean, these OCs, they're just a dime a dozen. They just swap out so seamlessly.
Well, that actually seems to be true in the NFL lately, but sometimes it's just because they think better of where situation move on or get the head coaching gig and so forth. But anyone else here in running back land you want to get to? Any other teams?
I guess last one that's really given me issues is the Texans. They made the move for David Montgomery. They traded for him, brought him in. They still have Woody Marks. I think we saw and we know what Woody Marks is. He enjoys his time in the medical tent, and he's a pass-catching running back. I don't ever think – I think it's a similar kind of vein as far as the Dylan Sampson. If the number one goes down, which that happened last year, I don't think that you can guarantee yourself a top 12, points per game basis or anything like that. Like, he is going to struggle. Could he do it? Absolutely. He could do it for a few games here and there, but the sustainability is just not something I want to bet on. So a piece I liked, you got him late. So hopefully you can either flip him for something or he's a nice plug and player for you. But David Montgomery, man, I just don't want anything to do with it. I know this offensive line has improved. It's kind of hard for it not to improve over the last 2 years. So I find myself a little bit more pessimistic. I am a Colts fan, so maybe that's what it is too. I'm just like, come on, they got a little hot too long, and I'm trying to cool them down a little bit. This whole division's trying to get hot while we're still trying to figure out our things. So it's just Texans' run game doesn't excite me this year at all.
Yeah, same. Montgomery, to me, if I can have him in redraft as my RB2, I'm probably pretty satisfied with that. But in Dynasty, I don't see a lot of at least long-term upside. And I'm not sure what to make of this offense either. I mean, right now, I've got Nico as their undisputed number one. I don't know if we're going to get to their wide receivers later or not. Jaden Higgins and Tank Dell at 2 and 3, and Dell hasn't played in a year and a half, and we don't know what he's going to look like. I don't know if Higgins can handle being a number 2 full time. I'm not impressed with the tight ends, even though Dalton Schultz had what was more or less a career year last year. And then on top of all that, we have C.J. Stroud, who has performed very well when his offensive line has been good. It is better than it was last year, but I would not call it good. I don't think you would either.
No. And the hard thing is, too, that defense is elite. And they're probably should be elite again this year. So he doesn't have to do much. And ideally, you would think game plan-wise, they want to lean on the running game. But I don't know if they're going to be able to.
Yeah, I think that makes the case for me for Montgomery for, redraft is specifically, because of that. I mean, you figure they're going to want to lean on the run game. He's that guy. But at Dynasty, I really don't want any part of any of that running game, really. If I've got Woody Marks, I'm probably hanging on to him. He saw some flashes of brilliance, and then we saw some reasons why he was the Brown pick he was. So we'll see how that goes. And I don't know what you'd be able to get for him right now unless you have the Montgomery manager who needs to plug and play, and perhaps you can extract some extra value there.
Yeah.
Before we leave running backs, because we did mention them, let's go back to Washington for a second and see if we can make any sense out of Bill Krosky Merritt, Rachaad White, Katron Allen, Jerome Ford. So essentially, other than Jeremy McNichols and Bill Krosky Merritt, the Commanders completely revamped the rest of that running back room. And it's been a process beginning last year when they dealt with Chris Rodriguez, let Austin Eckler go, and brought in White, Allen, and Ford. What are you making of this from a dynasty standpoint? Is there any piece of this you're interested in? Or is this a running back room that you are running out of the burning building for?
Yeah, I grabbed the dogs, and I'm halfway out the building. I am sprinting right now. It's an interesting situation. Do I like Ja'Cory Crosby Merritt going into the season? Sure, absolutely. In the dynasty stance, yeah, because where you got him last year, you have him cheap. It's a free piece. Just be happy with it. Would you love to be able to flip it for more value? Absolutely, but in most senses, like just be happy you've got an RB3. You might be able to plug and play. Things could fall his way. If this team comes out and looks good like they did 2 years ago, he could fall into 12 to 14 touchdowns pretty easily. And like that's enough to propel him for what you need. I think really the only one that has me intrigued right now is Rachaad White. I've never been a huge Rachaad White guy, but this seems like the year that I'd be willing to take the shot. And honestly, it's because it seems like they kind of dropped the ball when it came to just the skill players alone. Like, what did they do? They brought in Chigakonko. Sure. Love to be able to see them take a chance on an athletic tight end. I love that.
Yep.
But that's not your priority. That's not where the priority should be. And them and the Giants, they did the same thing. They prioritized bringing a tight end in, but then the wide receivers, what do we do? We got a day 3 guy in Antonio Williams. Sure. Love that. Don't love that he has to be the number 2 target, or at least the receiver right now for the room. So unless Stephon Diggs comes, to town, Brandon Ayuk, I know those rumors have been hot and bothered. It's June 2nd. There are 49ers. Let's go. Let's make this happen. Or maybe a Deebo Samuel comes back. But if that doesn't happen, I am really worried about the concentrated targets that would have to run through Terry McLaurin and Chigakonko, which leaves Rachaad White in a decent situation. So do I really want to pay for the guy? Not in so many, much of the sense, but if you're making a trade and that teammate that you're trading has Rachaad White, hey, why don't you toss that in? Why don't you go ahead and toss that in? I'll give you an extra third, bing, bam, boom, just kind of play it out. But I'm not exactly projecting high for anything in this room.
Yeah, I love that approach to it. I think folks who have White and have been sort of stuck with him and maybe are not happy he left Tampa Bay might be willing to part with him pretty easily. He is probably, I've mentioned this before, and certainly have said it in my rankings, he's probably the unsexiest RB2 that has ever walked the earth. And yet he's the only one who's consistently been in the top 24 since he entered the league. You do say 12 to 14 touchdowns for Bill Krosky Merritt. I'm worried that Rachaad White gets 7 or 8 of those because that was sort of the role that he played in Tampa Bay. I'm not saying that's what he's going to be doing in Washington, but he has that skill set there that I do worry about the vulturing. And then there's still Katron Allen and Jerome Ford kicking around, and they spent not much draft capital on Katron Allen, but they did draft him. How do you see him fitting in? Do you see him fitting in, first of all? And if so, how?
Not so much. I think he's going to need some things to happen to this roster to kind of put himself, because he was a 6th-round pick, I believe. I don't know. He wasn't exactly one of the I mean, none of these running backs were we excited about, if we're being
right.
honest, after outside of love. I liked Emmett Johnson. I liked Adam Randall, but that's just because we have to find somebody to say that we like in these classes. I don't think anybody was truly set up for success. So Katron Allen, if you have him, I think it's a great lottery ticket. That's what you're holding on to. If you get some guys that some surprise retiring, because we're not hoping for injury here, but maybe we're taking some time off and it opens them up. I think that's all you're waiting for. Oh my gosh, it's week 8 and 3 guys are hurt. Katron Allen's getting the start. bam, you're either plugging and play him or you put him on the trade block to see if you can get a third back in return or whatever you spent on him.
And we've seen Washington already once trade a running back in season that they were using rather heavily. So that could also be an avenue for Kaytron Allen. All right, let's head over to wide receiverville here, and again start kind of the macro picture. What are you looking for in the wide receiver room when you're evaluating it as a whole piece?
Well, this one, as you brought up there at the top of the show, as we're seeing 11 personnel kind of dissipate, it's gotten a lot harder because that lovely case of like, all right, do you go heavy wide receiver early, grab some running backs later, or is it heavy running back and you get some wide receiver twos? Well, it seems like the wide receiver twos have kind of disappeared. Like there is now a hefty tier break between the elite wide receivers and then the next guys. And these next guys, it's not necessarily do you get consistency. Is like, do I get enough that I'm not having to drop these players and repick them up, or at least in like the redraft sense of it. It's a struggle. I'm not going to lie, because I think once you get to like wide receiver 14 to I think wide receiver 32, at least my redraft rankings this year, I don't care where you put them. I think it's so easily just swapped out. You're going to have hot spurts from each guys. There's so much plays into it, whether it be the scheduling, how the team's playing. We had 22 offensive coordinator changes this year. Yep. It's going to be some growing pains, I bet, that first week, especially with less preseason. And now these guys are spending so much time traveling for all these international games. I don't know what's happening with that. So it's the wide receiver twos. It's an interesting situation trying to pick out guys that are my favorites and that are decent bets. And it's more so the touchdown dependent ones. I'm like, all right, what can I make a bet on that I think this guy could actually propel himself as a viable piece? It's going to be touchdowns. And that's not something that's typically smart to bet on.
No, yeah, I mean, first week is being really kind there, very kind there. It's like, yeah, it'd be really about first 6 weeks, maybe 9 weeks. So I've said to Dynasty managers before, don't panic after 1 week. This is especially going to be a year for that, because a lot of offenses are going to do a lot of things differently by week 6 than they did in week 1 this year. And
Keon Coleman was top 5 in week 1.
Yes.
We saw how that went.
And if you were smart, you traded him right there, because that's going to be the peak of his value. Now, you've talked before on a couple of occasions about what you call the tier 2.5 problem with respect to wide receivers. What is that? What do you mean by that? And what would be the dynasty implications of where you find the tier 2.5 problem?
Yeah, that's my easy out one. I cannot figure out whether to put a guy in tier 2 or tier 3. I found myself in a lot of those collab draft shows that I didn't know where to put these players. Look, they deserve to be with the tier 2 guys, but your output is more of the tier 3. And I think it's more of my high bets. Look, they deserved probably to be tier 3. That's why I can't officially put them in tier 2. But if I'm going to make a bet on, my tier 3, whether it be 4 players, 8 players, well, these 2 or 3 guys, I think they need to be in that half tier, that tier 2.5, because in a vacuum, I would rank them here, but this is who I'm betting on this year. I'm not necessarily like my guys, but
right.
Or at least in best ball, like these are the ones I have high exposure to this year. These are the ones I'm taking the bet that I think that they can break it, because we can do all of the math in the world. We can do all the projections. We can grab all of the Vegas odds, all of this historical data. But all it takes is Joe Burrow going out there and breaking his ankle week 1, or a David Johnson cracking his wrist in the first week of the season. There are so many little minute things that completely pull the cog out of the machine. So that's why you have to do. That's what we call our shots. We got some sharp people out here that are really great at fantasy football. But at the end of the day, we kind of come to the same results. So you just got to take a shot. You got to have your take on the player, and that's usually where it comes into my tier 2.5. It's like, look, these players don't deserve to be up as high as they were. You'd yell at me in the comment section if I did, but I'm going out on a limb here and saying I believe in these players for this year, so I'm going to put them up just a bit higher.
Just a little bit higher. Yeah, we didn't set up at the beginning that you do a lot of best ball, which means that you also have a perspective of looking for who's got the upside potential. I think that's why you mentioned touchdowns a few minutes ago. That's obviously the upside play, not something necessarily to rely upon for a base, but a guy falls into the end zone, especially if you're a tight end. Falling into the end zone is the difference between being tight end 6 and tight end 24. because they're all kind of jammed together. And, you know, tier 2.5 problem, now that I've got that, I've had it too, especially with rookies this year, where, you know, so who is your QB3? Like, well, somebody has to be QB3 in this rookie class, so I'm going to take, you know, at this moment, I'm taking Carson back, not because I believe that he's the QB3 or a good quarterback. I would rather leave 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 blank and put him at 9, but it doesn't work that way. and so, because of his situation in Arizona, I'll just, why not? He's next. He's played a lot. He looks good at times. He may be starting by week 3. He may be starting by week 1 if they
Jacoby can't figure this out.
We were set under contract again. So we got that there. So let's dive in. Let's get into some of these wide receiver rooms where not necessarily your 2.5 problem. Sure we'll hit some of those guys, but where's the murkiness in wide receivers that you might be looking at even the team's wide receiver 1 and going, this is not a wide receiver 1.
Let's go to Chicago. Let's go to the Windy City then. It seems like it's been quite a polarizing conversation. Just about any pocket of fantasy football, the community I've poked into. Right now, as far as just like best ball drafts, you've got Luther Burden going at wide receiver 21. You got Odunze going at wide receiver 28. Coming out, like, if you're just looking at prospects, I love Luther Burden. I was so excited for him last year. I just loved how he wins, the metrics, all of that. Odunze was fine. I liked him fine enough, but Burden, I was excited for him. I was coming into this offseason, like, oh, here we go. It's time. Well, I wasn't the only one that shared those feelings, and his ADP has now moved up to a point where I'm like, I'm okay.
Nope.
I've got a little exposure. I do have some in Dynasty, but he was also a hard player to acquire in Dynasty. Like, I saw him go 107, 108. Like, I saw him go above Tet and Ibuka in some of my drafts, and I'm like, I can't pay that because I know whether I think he's a better player or not. I know where the value lies. You shouldn't be drafting him that high because of how that plays out, and so I didn't get as much exposure to him as one, but I've gone through my things. And like right now, my rankings, I have Odunze inside my top 24. I've got Burden just outside. It's my 2026 season rankings, not necessarily Dynasty.
Okay.
But like I like Odunze more, and why? It's the cost. I think Colston Loveland might be the number 1 target in this offense. So I don't necessarily want to pay out the nose for a wide receiver. We're kind of gambling on it a little bit.
Yeah, for Dynasty purposes, I've got Odunze at wide receiver 15 and Burden at wide receiver 20.
Okay.
Which is the way that I've got them right now. I think I could swap them and make an argument to keep them right where they are. But I'm with you in that if I'm not holding either one of them, I'm not really wild about acquiring them right now because we're not sure which is the 1 and which is the 2. And when you have a running back situation where there is a 1A and a 1B and they split 55-45, you really don't want either one of them. And I think that's kind of where I have landed with the Chicago wide receiver room. If I have them, great, I'll ride it. If somebody wants to give me, a 2027 first for one of them, yes, here you go. I may very well do that because that gives me a lot more flexibility than wondering how this is going to play out in Chicago and whether this evolving offense can actually support the 2 of them in a way that gets them into my starting lineups as a wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, I actually just acquired an orphan about a month and a half ago. The orphan, of course, has Luther Burden and Odunze, and I haven't started the process of trying to move one yet because it's a very delicate situation. I really don't care who I keep. I want to sell whoever I can get more for. So, like, personally, like, I'm willing to take the shot on either one because I already have them acquired. It's like, all right, who's going to pay me the most for which player? And it's, do I put them both on the trade block at once? Do I put one and try and, because the league mates, everybody's going to try and galaxy brain this thing and try and figure out, all right, what does Brian know? Does he know something? Why? And it's like, no, I just don't want them both. I can compete this year, but I need to split that group up to make sure that I can compete. So it's a tricky situation people are dealing with in Dynasty. I don't think you're going to lose value, though. If you hold them both, if you hold both these players, I think they're only going to go up. Caleb Williams is kind of bad in some metrics last year. Like, I'm going to leave room for that to continue to improve. Second year with the OC, with the head coach /OC. But like we talk about that all the time, how much improvement there is from year 1 to year 2. So I'm not scared off of this room. I just don't know exactly how to definitively evaluate it.
Are there, and this is completely off of where we were going, but I'm just curious when you're looking at Odunze and Burden, I mean, who might be other wide receivers that are ranked right around them or valued right around them, even in a best ball sense, that you would rather take the chance on than either one of those guys?
I take Terry McLaurin over both of those. And 2026, I'm not doing a dynasty trade outright, Terry for one of those two fellas,
Right.
but I like the condensed targets of what it should be going to Terry McLaurin. I like David Blau coming in here. I like Jaden Daniels taking that step. Lad McConkey, man. Right now I've got QJ way higher in my ranks than I want to, but like someone's going to benefit from this offense, and it could just be spread across so much that we're incredibly frustrated. But like Lad McConkey's somebody I want to take a shot on this year. Someone's going to be on the field, and it could be Lad. He's a little fella, but he's still walked away with 7 and 8 touchdowns across his first two seasons. Like he would fall in that category for Zay Flowers with me. Love the player. I think he's great. I'd rather him not be on my team though. Just because 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, he's maxed out. Lad might be a little different. And if he's down there operating that way in this offense, we could see, some magic happen. I'm trying to think of who else. Honestly, Brian Thomas Jr., Marvin Harrison. I'll take a swing at those in the same range as I will the Chicago wide receivers this year.
Yeah, McConkey's somebody I've got my eye on. I've actually have a team called Breaking Lad. Those of you know I'm from Albuquerque and Breaking Bad. We got Lad on there. So he's untouchable for a trade because then I have to change the name of the team. So we're not going to do that. But I will have a breakdown of Lad McConkey coming up in Football Guys in the coming weeks. So
nice.
Watching out for that. But I'm with you. I see him as the primary beneficiary of this new, not only, the departure of Keenan Allen, assuming that remains a departure, which is not clear at this moment, but also, the new offensive coordinator, the healthier offensive line, healthier Justin Herbert, and the rise of and the usage of multi-tight end sets is going to take some of the other receivers off the board, including potentially someone like a Quentin Johnston. So he would make me continually nervous. But I'm a TCU guy, so I want to see him do really well. But I was like, when I had the opportunity to draft him or pick him up, he's got some mechanical issues that persist to this day, and the scheme may not support him as well as we would need him to be supported without him falling into the end zone several times more often than he has.
Yeah, that's the hard thing. I think he's one of 4 guys that have 8 touchdowns over the last 3 seasons.
Yeah. That's
not a fun stat because I don't want to be boosting up QJ as far as my fantasy football concerns go.
See, just to close the book on that, I've got McConkey as my wide receiver 13 in Dynasty and Quentin Johnston at wide receiver 38, which makes me a little nervous. And then I have Trey Harris at wide receiver 66. That really, I like the talent. I just don't. I'm to a point where I'm really struggling with wide receiver 3s on a team that runs multi-tight ends because he may be doing a lot of cheering from the sidelines this year.
Yeah, Trey Harris was a dynasty buy for me back in January. It's one of those like, hey, we're going to go pick up what we can for scraps and hope that the value kind of rolls into something more, and it did at first when we were Mike McDaniel. I was excited, and then Kohler shows up, and then Njoku shows up, and then Alec Ingold, the fullback, shows up, and then Keenan Allen says, "Hey, I'll make my decision late July, so I could just really, really mess this up." So Trey Harris it's a little heartbreaking for me.
Yeah, I still see him as a buy, even if Keenan Allen comes back, because whoever has him is dumping him. He might actually just drop him. Maybe he'll pick him up off the waiver wire at that point. True. But I would take a chance that he'd dangle a 4th-round pick, see if I can get him, especially 27 4th might be worth quite a bit more than a typical one. Trey Harris to me still a pickup. It's just have a longer view of him than what we're seeing this year, because I expect this year, absent an injury, which we of course don't want, I see him having another kind of lackluster season where he's not out there very much.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Where to next among the wide receivers?
Let's talk Buffalo. Let's talk Buffalo a little bit. DJ Moore.
Trigger warning for all the Buffalo fans watching or listening. Here we go.
And Buffalo fans, come here. I'm on your team here. I think I have said more mean things about Brandon Beane this offseason than I've said about any. And I don't like Zach Taylor. I have fun every offseason being able to talk bad about Zach Taylor. And Brandon Beane has been my boy this offseason, just to be highlighted. Yeah, cool. You went and spent a second for DJ Moore to just see what else got pulled off as far as these wide receivers trades. But either way, we're stuck with the situation we have. We've got DJ Moore there. Mecole Hardman is on the team. Keon Coleman, Josh Palmer, Shavers, who we got flashes of last year.
Shakir.
Oh, yes, of course, Shakir. Cannot forget the PPR wide receiver Shakir. 4. I don't want any of it. I don't want any of it. Like, could DJ Moore... I think best ball is the only format I really want DJ Moore in. Could he pop off and give us decent enough games where he finds himself in the top 30? Sure. Would that absolutely surprise me? Not at all. But do you know which weeks that you're starting him? Are you happy on starting him 3/4 of the season? Probably not. Probably not. And like that's just how it's worked with Josh Allen. Between the touchdown share that has leaned heavily on Cook, we know Josh Allen's good for a handful of rushing touchdowns as well. The two tight ends that are Dalton Kincaid, who still has not come around, Dawson Knox, who continues to annoy us with his touchdown catches. Like, I don't want to mess with it. And this team has been so close to regressing the last 3 seasons. We get through part of the season, I'm like, well, maybe the Bills don't have it. Maybe this is the year. And they pull it together. They figure it out. But I just don't find myself wanting to mess with this wide receiver room. Like, Josh Allen just doesn't hold up elite, unless it's an elite wide receiver like Stephon Diggs.
Yep. I with you. I find it kind of shocking that this team can't pair its Hall of Fame MVP quarterback with a receiver at least one receiver that can really be a difference maker. I don't see that in any of these guys. I've got DJ Moore as my wide receiver 30 in Dynasty, which feels generous, but he does have an MVP caliber quarterback, and he is the guy. Shakir at 44, which also feels generous. Keon Coleman at wide receiver 90, which feels a little punitive, but I've been burned twice now, and so I'm not really that interested in pursuing a third time. A third-year breakout happens. J.J. Zacharyason's found some guys to do that, but it's just not something I want to bet on. I think with me, with Moore and with Shakir, it depends on the starting lineup format for me. If I'm in a league where I have to start 3 or 4 wide receivers week in and week out, I'm interested. I want a piece of for this, sure. And I'll take either one that I could get. Probably just preferring Moore in the shorter term if I'm contending, and then either of them if I'm kind of in the middle. None of them if I'm a rebuilder. I don't want to rebuild around either of these guys. But if I'm looking at only needing to start 2 and I've got lots of flex space, then I'm with you. I don't want any part of this wide receiver room. I still don't want any part of this wide receiver room. This would be year 2 or 3 of not wanting any piece of it.
Yeah, despite Khalil Shakir always making content videos, especially in the best ball community, always a great stop. He gives you stuff. He hasn't finished. He's never finished inside the top 35. I think he's got a 36 finish in PPR. That's not good. Like that's just not good, especially when you look at a points per game basis. It's just that much worse. So, like we kind of talked about, when I'm betting on something in these ambiguous situations, I'm betting on an outlier. I'm betting on touchdowns because Shakir's not my guy. DJ Moore would be the one. So like you said, if I am going to take a swing, it would be DJ Moore. The last 4 years, 6, 8, and 7 touchdowns. Granted, completely different teams, completely just different situations, but the guy knows how to find the end zone. He can give us some of those big plays. And Josh Allen, he makes magic happen. DJ Moore doesn't even have to be good to get free down the end zone. All they have to do is think that Josh Allen's being sacked by the 5 players that are hanging on his back, and he flings that rocket down the field. And that's all it's going to take for DJ Moore to have a few of those, but do I want to guess that game, play that guessing game? No. So, yeah, 3 wide receiver, 2 flex, something like that lineup. Sure, I absolutely love playing him in there, but 2 wide receiver, 2 flex, I'm going to see if I can move on from him.
Speaking of moving on, where else would you like to go? Nice segue, by the way. Where else would you like to go in wide receiverville, or are you ready to move on to tight end city?
Oh, man. Let's go to tight end city. Good place to be, especially this year of 2026, where we play 12, 13, and 14 personnel.
And Sean McVay might play 05 personnel for the first time in NFL history. You just never know.
I hope he does.
Yeah, that'd be so awesome. I assume we're going to look at the Rams here a little bit, but what are you looking at for a team's tight end room when you're trying to sort of weigh it against others and decide which ones are the better ones, which ones are not? What are you really looking at?
So I'm looking at usually two things, and one of them completely negates my take when we get to the Rams. But I'm looking for concentrated target share as far as just how many tight ends are actually viable to go out there, and go catch some stuff. Is it a situation where, like the Ravens last year, where you have Mark Andrews and Likely, it can get a little muddy, or is it a situation like in Atlanta, where you got Kyle Pitts and there's nothing behind it,
Yeah.
So that's usually what I'm looking for. I'm looking for athletic freaks, somebody who can do something with the ball, make some magic. Tucker Kraft, why he's been so great, he's been leading the league or nearly leading the leads in yards after catch. That's not stuff that you get from these great blocking tight ends. The guys that are out there doing a lot of blocking. Every now and then they'll catch a ball, but outside of your George Kittles, of course. So I'm looking for the athletic freaks. I'm looking for the concentrated rooms. And it's a little harder. It's a little harder now, especially with these high draft capital going to these tight ends. And then you have to dissect, all right, was this high draft capital going towards the team and the scheme, or is this actually because this is a good round 2 tight end? So it's a lot to dissect when it comes to the tight end position now. And that was why we had Andrew Cooper on that episode, because I'm like, look, I need a little help here with the tight ends, man.
He is definitely a tight end whisperer. Is the increasing use of multi-tight end personnel, is that changing the way that you're addressing the position as you are drafting it or building around it for fantasy purposes? Does it make you more interested in them or less interested in them?
Both, I guess. I think it's something I don't want to overreact to, because what we've seen, despite this change, after tight end 6, I don't care. And honestly, when it comes to drafting tight ends, after tight end 3, I don't care. Because if they're not a top 3 guy, I don't want them. I don't want to draft them. Because when you take that tight end 5, tight end 7, tight end 9, you feel obligated to play them. You feel stuck to have to use that, at least in the redraft sense. Like, if I'm spending up on a tight end, I don't want to take a second one necessarily, because it's, a roster spot I'm clogging up. Well, I'm just going to roll with the punches a little bit. He gave me decent points. Let me just kind of ride it out. Oh, Rondé Gadsden's blowing up this week. Should I pick him up? No, I've still got my guy. And I hate playing that game. Absolutely hate playing that game. So if I'm not getting Brock Bowers this year, Colston Loveland's flirting with that territory for me. But if I don't get Brock Bowers, I'm out. I am absolutely cool with the tight end 12 through 30. I have no problem streaming them. I have no problem making up the points. I think there are some absolute studs as far as what you're going to get in return. Because when it comes to tight end, I need like 8 points. That's all I need. Sometimes you're just shooting for the touchdown. Sometimes you got the guy that's getting 3 or 4 points. But I think the way that I'm trying to look at it now is, how do I evolve as the NFL is evolving? Maybe I don't need to evolve in how my roster construction is, but maybe I need to evolve as far as how my team and how my leagues. Now, it's way harder in Dynasty. You can't just be changing rules willy-nilly. You need to put 1, 2, 3 year cap on it. Everybody needs to talk about it so they can plan for it. But like in redraft, yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty sure we're going to be adding either a quarter or a half point to tight end first downs this year. I don't want to go crazy with it and turn it into a tight end premium where you're adding all these receptions, because then it kind of outweighs what you're really looking at. But I think it's just challenging myself to, let me make sure that I'm keeping up with the times and keeping up with fantasy football. Because for a while, I don't know if people know this, receivers didn't get points for catches. They just didn't. Wes Welker, he was no point. That you don't want Wes Welker, because what is he doing? Nothing. What did we do? We evolved. We got half point. We got full point. So it's just making sure that I'm staying up with things, making sure that those rules evolve as well as the NFL.
Yeah, it's an important point, because we've seen the rise of tight end premium leagues going even over and above that point. And for the most part, I find those to be red herrings, because when it comes to deciding who to start, I'm with you, like tight end 9 to tight end 24, it's who falls into the end zone this week, and your guess is as good as mine as to who that's going to be. There are weeks that I've played Mark Andrews thinking he is in a smash spot. I watch him get Watch him run a bunch of cardio, get 2 targets, drop one of them, catch the other one for 9 yards, and that half point extra in PPR give me nothing. So kind of with you on that. Unfortunately, in Dynasty, we do not have the luxury of streaming the position. Every potentially viable tight end's already on somebody's roster, so you do need to have several of them. But I'm with you in that if it's not going to be one of the top guys, then I'm probably holding. If I'm going to startup draft, I'm probably holding on that position and drafting it like I would draft it in redraft, because at this point it's interchangeable. Just know what you need from the position. If you only have to play one tight end and you got 11 other people on your team, that's a pretty small contribution to your overall score. And if 6 points, 8 points will help you, great. And if you can afford a 0 there because they didn't catch anything that particular week, or they had to block the whole game and couldn't run patterns, so be it. But I do find that tight end premium tends to overinflate the value in most people's minds in a way that really doesn't do much for you.
Yeah, you shouldn't have some of these guys that are carrying the weight of these championship teams at the tight end position. Like, no, we got a scoring issue to fix there. But like, I love startup drafts, punting on tight end altogether, and then just cleaning up at the end. I'm taking 4 to 6 players, but like guys like Isaiah Likely, Hunter Henry, Chigakonkwo, Brenton Strange, Juwan Johnson, AJ Barner, gems that I was getting in double-digit rounds plus last year in startups. Yep. And now I'm looking at those teams like coming into my rebuilding. I'm like, all right, I think I'm ready to compete. Well, I've got 3-ish guys that I'm semi-streaming, and then another 2 I could probably sell for, accumulated value in some way. So yeah, punt it, because if you don't have one of the top 3 guys, it doesn't really matter. Jake Tonjes, I have got somebody I'm just tossing thirds at everywhere to pick him up as much as I can. Look, George Kittle, generational talent. He's amazing. Yep. He's great. Is he really coming back from a torn Achilles at the 30-plus age that he is? When it just doesn't make sense. He's a superhuman, so if he does it, I wouldn't be that surprised. But right. Jake Tonjes was an amazing plug-and-play last year for us. So I got him everywhere. I've got him everywhere, all formats.
I do too. Got a lot of shares of him. He was a player I featured way back early last season as a Dynasty waiver wire future. Go ahead, get him now when no one's paying attention, because he actually has the talent. He fits right in. He's not George Kittle, but he could play George Kittle's role to about 70% of that, and that's better than most tight ends. To address one quick thing, I'm going to have someone say, wait a minute, you were just telling us on the draft show how much you were loving these tight ends in this class, and now you're saying ignore tight ends. We were just talking about startup drafts, and startup drafts, I'm ignoring tight ends. In the 2026 rookie draft, tight end is where the value is after about, pick 6. Certainly after pick 14. You want, I think, to really clean up on tight ends with your 3rd and 4th round picks and whatever lower picks you may have, because why not? If you can find a difference maker at the position, you've got an advantage. And if you spend a 4th round pick on a tight end that didn't pan out, your other guy wouldn't have panned out either, who you could have taken there.
Yeah, and I think even in startups, taking, if you're drafting rookies within the startups, that's some of the best value you're going to have, because you're looking at so many players. And at that point in the draft, not only are the rookies going to be suppressed because there's all those other players, but would you rather have Tank Bigsby or one of these rookie tight ends? Absolutely, give me the rookie tight ends. Unless I need Tank Bigsby, unless I'm doing that startup and I'm going into I'm going to compete this year, I need running back depth. No, absolutely, sprinkle in those tight ends all over the place, because whether it be depth, Jolie, the guy that went to the Patriots, oh my gosh, drawing a blank.
Raritan.
There you go.
Raritan.
There's some stuff out there. I like it. I'd much rather have these day 2 tight ends than a shot in the dark at all these wide receivers and running backs at day 3.
Just be mindful that some of those day 2 tight ends are only going to block. So be aware of that.
Jacksonville player. I don't want him.
Yeah, you do not date. Yeah, I love Nate Borkacher, but not in fantasy. He is not somebody I would go after. So let's let the draft capital convince you that this is a tight end to go get. There's definitely some difference there. But let's dive in, and I don't know where you want to start, but we mentioned the Rams, and that's the one everybody's going to be interested in. So let's talk about Sean McVay's favorite toys.
Look, it kind of goes against 50% of what I was saying. Concentrated target share. I don't want a lot of mouths to feed. But as far as 2026, I have Terrance Ferguson inside my top 15 right now, which it's hard to gauge what I'm actually saying there because he's outside of the top 6. Does he really matter? But no. But when you look at his ADP, he's going as like tight end 26 in best ball draft. So like very bullish on him this year. And even in Dynasty, I think he's a slam dunk grab right now. I know they just got Max Clare in the second round. Yikes. It's not really that big of a deal, folks. We know they run multiple tight ends. Higbee, Parkinson, and Allen, I believe, will all be
Davis
off.
Allen.
I think all 3 of them will be off the Rams going into 2027, leaving Max Clare and Ferguson as the only 2. They run multiple tight ends. I don't care which one, but I really like the prospect that we got, Terrance Ferguson coming out of Oregon. Sorry, Claire's coming out of Ohio State. But yeah, I really liked Ferguson. I thought he was a fun thing. We got quite a bit of him as a rookie too. We got those flashes that, traditionally it takes 3-4 years for tight ends to really shine. We got to see that from him. And in this situation of Devontae Adams, they tried to trade him this offseason. He's probably done, or they can't go into next year banking on him being the number 2 target. That opens it up. They just traded away first-round picks. Ty Simpson is now the only first-round picks that the Rams have taken on this team for, 15 years? I think it's going to span by the time they get their first picks back. So, Terrance Ferguson, huge buy for me this year, especially in Dynasty.
I think we've gotten spoiled by all of the instant success that some of the top tight ends have had recently, that we were expecting something like that from Ferguson unnecessarily and unfairly because the situation wouldn't allow that, even if he has that level of talent and ability. When you've got guys who've been features of this offense for years and Sean McVay for years, it's going to take a while to get him in. So I'm with you. I have Ferguson as my tight end 21, and Claire at 33. And then I've got Colby Parkinson at 36, Higbee at 49, and Davis Allen at 79, because all 5 of them catch touchdowns. I need to rank all of them.
You've got 80 tight ends ranked. That's amazing. I love that.
I think I got more than 90. I'll have to. I'm working on some tight end stuff today with adding comments to my Dynasty rankings over at Football Guys. So we'll see how many exactly I have, but it's at least 89.
That's
and
wild.
I don't think Davis Allen's the last one, but So we go deep, and we go deep here. I don't want really any part of this from a playing now standpoint, but I love the idea of Ferguson and the lesser expensive Claire, because you can pick Claire up probably off the waiver wire, even if you've had a 5-6 round rookie draft. Claire sometimes doesn't go. I think they're good values to have. They're lottery tickets in some respects, but Ferguson does have the talent too. If Sean McVay ever decided to go back to his 11 personnel roots, then we could see a lot more work for Ferguson than we're seeing right now. I just don't know that I'd put any of these guys in my starting lineup unless I had to at this moment.
That's the hard thing. Yeah, I have him ranked up there at 15, but that is by no means I'm drafting him and starting him in certain leagues.
Yep.
Not yet.
Where to next for tight ends?
Ooh, let's talk. Pittsburgh, is it finally time? Is Pat Freiermuth?
Yeah.
Is it he's moving Pat? Darnell Washington was trying to break out last year, but the Jonnu Smith days are over. We have no more Arthur Smith there.
Thank goodness.
You got some old guys there catching the balls as far as wide receiver. I guess DK's not necessarily old, but I like Pat Freiermuth, and it just seems like kind of an unsexy buy right now in Dynasty. He seems like he could easily be fighting for second or third on that target list, for this team.
I think certainly this year that may be the case. I'm not real high on Freiermuth myself. He's my tight end 34 for Dynasty. I'm not confident in the situation there in Pittsburgh at all once Aaron Rodgers leaves, what the next offense looks like. You've got DK Metcalf, you've got Michael Pittman, you drafted Jeremy Bernard, Roman Wilson's still kicking around there somewhere. You've got now Warren and Dowdle. There's a lot to feed there, whether Darnell Washington vultures 8 touchdowns away from that or not. So certainly, if my choice is between throwing to a 5'8" slot guy or a 7'9" tight end like Darnell Washington, he's not really that tall, but a big tight end like Darnell Washington, I would do that in a heartbeat. So I worry a little bit about longer term, but I do think if you were just going to, if you had that sort of second tight end desire on particularly redraft, but even in Dynasty these days, there's nothing wrong with Pat Freiermuth in terms of having him on your roster. Potentially, he's startable. I just wouldn't call him bankable in any sense of that word.
And I think that's the most annoying thing about Washington is like, no, dude, ideally you are the best second tight end to have because you are a sixth lineman. And yet they are using him with some of the athletic prowess that he has, which is ultimately cuts into that big pie that I'm hoping Pat Freiermuth has, because that's like I talked about. That's what we're looking for, a tight end room that's very defined to one player. One that is defined to one player down in Tampa, Cade Otton. Great situation, right? No. I don't know why we get hyped about Cade Otton every week 9 through week 15. I get it. Tight end's rough. You're looking for someone. Dude was terrible. I think he had 1 week inside the top 13 last week. No. Everybody was hurt. He had ample opportunity last year. We've seen it every year. The guy is athletic enough that he runs a lot, but like he's not the athletic freak that I'm looking for. This is just I can't see how anybody still owns this guy in Dynasty. It boggles my mind.
He had what I would consider to be 4 or 5 smash week opportunities last year and didn't hit in any of them. He did have some good weeks against shockingly tougher competition, but I think that had more to do with the injuries everywhere else and Baker Mayfield operating on half of his body than it did Cade Otton's talent. He is my wide receiver 29, tight end 29. So he's down there in Pat Freiermuth land. Just to close one thing on Freiermuth, though, we do have Mike McCarthy here. We were kind of looking at Darnell Washington from his Arthur Smith days. McCarthy's not been known as a 2 tight end set guy historically. He's run a lot of 11. I don't know that he would still do that, but you've got some players they drafted certainly like they might be thinking that way.
Darnell Washington tush push. They're going to put him down there in the goal line. Let me see a tush push from this fella. Like he can Trevor Lawrence it, just hike it and just reach over the line. That's all he's got to do.
Yeah, exactly. I don't. Yeah, I'm with you. If Mark Andrews can do a tush push, then Darnell Washington should be the only guy you use on any down and one.
He doesn't even need a center. Let him hike it to himself. Like he's got this.
So if that happened and you were in a point per first down league, then Darnell Washington might be your lottery ticket. So just keep that name in mind. Where else here in tight end land do you want to look?
Oh, where to look? Philadelphia is one that's intriguing me more now that we've got the A.J. Brown trade that's been pulled off. It's now looking like it's Devonta Smith, it's Mekhi Lemon. It is the biggest group of wide receiver 4s ever coming in behind that. And they brought Dallas Goedert back, who had a career year, led by a lot of touchdowns. And they also took Eli Stowers there in the second round. Obviously, Goedert isn't the future. He's never been an elite tight end like what we got to see from him last year. So I don't know what to bank on this whole situation. We have a new first-year play caller, Sean Mannion, right? Yeah. Yes. I keep getting Mannion and Blau mixed up from just the Eagles Commanders where they're coming
in there. Washington, yeah. Mannion.
So we've got a new play caller. They've been doing this every other thing where the even years they seem to find somebody who's good. But like, what does that mean for Dallas Goedert? Does that mean I want to play that game? Am I banking on touchdowns? Because we said that's dumb. If you're going to make a claim, I do it from time to time, but I'm also not a Dallas Goedert guy. I like making fun of him every week when I do my streaming shows. So it's a hard situation for me to figure out how I want this, because how concentrated is the passing? Like, is this a reduced pie, as we've seen with a lot of Jalen Hurts teams? And they got Saquon Barkley. They should lean on that.
I hope here for Jalen Hurts in this offense is that Sean Mannion is a quarterback. So perhaps there will be some effort to open that game up. For me, this is actually not a complex decision in Dynasty. This is Eli Stowers all the way. This is the one I'm investing in. He stands to be the heir apparent to Goedert. And even if Goedert stays around, Goedert and Zach Ertz could support Dynasty managers and fantasy managers as a duo. And a different play caller, different situation. But nonetheless, this is one of those rooms that I'm okay with either one of them playing with me in say, redraft this year, because they're both going to get some work. But for Dynasty purposes, Stowers is my tight end 10. Dallas Goedert is my tight end 19 because somebody has to be. I think after about 16, 17, 18 tight ends, the next 30 are kind of in a jumble together, and Goddard's sort of the lead of that right now because I think he's going to have a great year this year. I don't know what happens after that. I do know he structured his contract in a way that was very friendly for Philadelphia to come back this year. I don't know if that means he can do that again or if he tests the free agent market. Either way, Stowers to me is the choice if you're a dynasty manager.
Yeah, it seems like you're kind of stuck with Goddard then. He's age 31. Everybody knows the situation. His future will be on another team most likely going forward. So what does that ultimately open up? Do you buy into the 11 touchdowns you saw last year? Because he had 12 touchdowns in the previous 4 years combined before that. Yep. So, if you got him, you got to play him. But you kind of stuck with him, I think.
He, to me, also is in a no man's land from a dynasty standpoint because as a contending team, I can't really rely on him to be my starting tight end. That would have to be because my Trey McBride or someone similar to that and that caliber went down for an injury or it's a bye week and I have to plug somebody in. But then he's also too old and in too precarious a position to invest in as a rebuilder. So he's sort of the perfect tight end for a team that doesn't know where it's going because you're not locked into him long term. And he'll deliver results now, and that's really kind of about it. So I actually probably have him ranked too high for that reason. I may have to revisit that later today. This is being recorded on June 2nd, later today as I evaluate some dynasty rankings. But Goddard, I don't know. We don't really do best ball here much, but because I've got a best ball expert here, and we're doing Scott Fishbowl here pretty soon. How are you handling Goddard? Where do you is that touchdown dependency the only thing? And if so, it sounds like you're not in on it.
I've got zero exposure to Goddard so far this year. Like Isaiah likely goes right around him with the uncertainty around Malik Neighbors. I'd rather take the swing on Isaiah Likely. Hunter Henry goes almost 2 rounds behind Dallas Goedert. Give me Hunter Henry. Give me Hunter Henry. He's not fighting for all the targets. That's what AJ Brown's going to be doing. But Hunter Henry could easily outscore Goddard in the touchdown department. Chigakonko is going way after that. Sure, I'll take a shot. We talked about just what those pass catchers look like. Juwan Johnson is being just, I don't know what he did, whose mom he pushed down on a curb or something like that. But the guy's down at tight end 21, and it's just insane. He's been on the last 3 Best Ball Mania winning teams. Like the team that won the millions of dollars. He's been on the last 3. Why can't we draft him? Why do we not want him? Juwan, I want you, buddy. I want you on my teams. AJ Barner, I'll take a swing at that. Pat Freiermuth, Gunnar Helm. These are all players that I'd take over Goddard this year.
Juwan Johnson, if you're a contender, that's the guy. That's a guy you want because New Orleans is a system that's just sort of built for him. Hunter Henry in New England, I think the addition of Raritan, although I don't think Raritan's going to see much of the playing field this year from a fantasy standpoint anyway. Henry's either the leading receiver in New England or second in targets, routes, catches, yards, all of it. So that's something that may not repeat now that A.J. Brown is officially finally a Patriot and our long national nightmare there is over. But Hunter Henry, I do like him over Goddard in best ball kinds of formats for redraft and even in dynasty, even though I know that that's a very short-term investment. That's why to me in dynasty, if you look at my rankings, there's this whole block of old guys that's kind of in this range. And that's where Goddard is. It's where Henry is, where a lot of these guys who are short-term rentals live. They're productive, but for how long?
Sounds like a tight end 2.5 tier right there.
It sounds like a tight end 2.5 tier. I have my own 2.5 tier problem, buddy. I have my own problem there. Any other tight ends you want to shake down here before we spend 1 minute on quarterbacks?
I was going to say, nobody else jumping off the page at me at this point. I feel like I've kind of shared the love to most of the ones that I'm eyeballing this year.
All right. Well, there's not a whole lot of quarterback controversy other than the one train wreck that happens to be on Lake Erie. But a lot of the starters are pretty well set. Backups, I think that's where sort of your murkiness might really lie, as in who's going to be the number 2 and who may still not play at all this year. Do you want to try to crack Cleveland's nut here?
I don't know what to do. I really don't. And like Superflex leagues, I glom onto quarterbacks. Any quarterback that I can get off the waiver wire, I can get cheap. I just want to grab onto them because most likely the value goes up at some point. It's just, do you pull it off? I really have no interest in messing with this. Like, there's a team that's completely in one of my Dynasty leagues. Like, they're completely tearing it down. It's time they're renewing, and they're trying to get rid of Deshaun Watson. They're literally looking. They're like, guys, I'll take anything. I'll take Fab at this point. And like nobody's pulled the trigger. Like that is a starting quarterback for X amount of games. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants it. Like done are the days that we do content talking about. You want a quarterback that finished top 5 3 years in a row? Yeah, that was a different decade, man.
Exactly. It's been a long time. Deshaun Watson obviously is on the wrong side of my no knucklehead policy, so he's not one I've ever really invested in. That said, I've got him in several Dynasty Superflex leagues solely because dude is, at the moment, a starting quarterback in the NFL, and there's only 32 of those, and I have to play 2 quarterbacks. And while I will hold my nose and put him in my lineup when I need to, he's worth more than nothing. How much more, I'm not sure. But if you are a Superflex team and you need a starting quarterback as your QB2, I'm going to say this. There are worse options than Deshaun Watson.
Oh man, that's awesome. Yeah, there's a handful of those guys. I'm like, I just really rather give me Jacoby Brissett. Let me give that a shot. There's so many. I think just a wide range of possibilities for most of these quarterbacks that are out. Outside of top 15, top 20.
I will say in rookie drafts this year in late rounds, I have been taking Taylor Green as a Superflex lottery ticket just on sheer athletic ability and talent. And the fact that the guys in front of him on the depth chart, none of them really should be starting quarterbacks in the NFL after this season. Not that Taylor Green should be either. He has too much Anthony Richardson in him for my taste, but Anthony Richardson is a week winner at times because of his running ability. Yeah, Green's kind of my favorite quarterback out of this group, but I wouldn't go out of my way to get him unless it's Superflex and I'm just taking a lottery ticket.
Yeah, I got a lot of him, and then was it Cole Payton, the North Dakota State kid that went to the Eagles? Both of those two in Superflex leagues I've taken everywhere I could just because I don't even know if they're going to be good or not. I don't think it matters if I think they're going to be good. All it takes is a couple of plays, like Jalen Milroe. I had somebody trade me Jalen Milroe for a first round, a 2026 first in August before Sam Darnold and the Seattle Seahawks took there, but he was calling a shot. He's like, yeah, give me the athletic guy, 3rd, 4th round quarterback. Sure. Go ahead. I have no reason to hold on to him. Let me just take the value at hand. And I sat there and laughed at him as I sat there and took Ty Simpson with the 107, the pick that he gave up for Jalen Milroe. I'm like, but.
Sorry about that. Just everything went black all of a sudden.
All good. At first I was like, oh crap, my internet. Oh no, what are we doing?
Yeah, it wasn't yours. It was not yours. That was mine. So, wow. Okay, I think we may still be recording.
Yeah, it says it is. I was
good.
I was filling it in the blank space for a little bit, and then you just got me rambling for a while.
That's all right. So no worries. Well, we'll see what that looks like. But I appreciate that. I do live shows occasionally, not this one, but other people's have had this happen before, where theirs has gone out as the host, and I've sat there and talked for 10 straight minutes, about whatever I could think of until the host got back.
Right.
So, sorry.
All good.
All right. Good. We'll pick this up. I think we were talking about Ty Simpson, right? Isn't that word?
Oh yeah,
the last word out of my mouth.
But yeah, Ty Simpson. I'm pretty excited. Like, fun after the Jared Verse trade, they won't have a single first round pick on the roster since before Jared Goff. So you have to. There's confidence there. Clearly, they took him in the top 13. This is their predecessor. I know they extended Matt Stafford, but Matt Stafford, they could win the Super Bowl this year and he could ride off into the sunset. Like that doesn't play it into me like at all. Like, would I rather have Ty Simpson now or to keep waiting to find out if the Jets finally find their quarterback? Because they're going to take another one in the top 3. How many times do we have to get that wrong before I'm like, maybe I just tie I tie my horse to, the head coach that seems to do a pretty good job with Sean McVay, that knows how to evolve an offense, how to win a Super Bowl, how to be one of the best play callers in the league. So I'm pretty bullish on him. I've taken him probably 3. I've got 8 dynasty leagues. I think I took him in 3 of them. I didn't have a lot of first round picks, but the few I did post 106, sure. Like I'm in the position. I've got 3 decent, or 2 good quarterbacks with a third decent one. Give me one more. Give me one more. I've got some aging vets that are going to be out of there. Give me something I can look forward to for 2027, 2028. And I think the most important, or the thing I really focused on most at the picks from 107 to 112, I think he has the lowest chance of his value going down. What's going to happen? Like, at this point, Matt Stafford's already signing the extension. He's not getting younger. There's no way that you're thinking, oh my gosh, Ty Simpson, yikes, it doesn't look good. No, nothing's going to look worse. Puka's going to sign an extension. That bodes well for him. The team wins a Super Bowl. That kind of bodes well for him too. Like, there's all of these things. Like, but when you look at all the other picks that you're taking at that point, Jadarian Price, that could fall off. The number of wide receiver, Casey Concepcion, Omar Cooper.
No.
We just talked about bad franchises. Do we really want to? Like, I'm not saying you can't take them, but as far as the likelihood that these guys could spike in value versus what could plummet, Ty Simpson seems to be one of the safest picks there in the first round, or in the back half of the first round.
Yep. Yeah. You talk about thinking the Jets might actually get it right next year. We know that objectively, subjectively, consensus based, this is one of the worst classes for skill positions in a long time. And the Jets and the Browns each spent 2 first-round draft picks on the worst draft class for skill positions in as long as anyone can remember. Thank you. I'll take Ty Simpson. Whoever they draft with the first-round pick next year, I will not take. I will take any other quarterback around them. Even if they take my QB1, I have zero confidence in those 2 franchises to do anything with the quarterbacks they draft next year. There's always the possibility that those quarterbacks shine somewhere else. Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold have both had pretty good careers after they got out from under their drafting franchise. So I am completely with you. Ty Simpson to me is in Superflex somebody I want highly because he's going to be a starting quarterback. Is he going to be a good one? I don't know, but he's going to have his chance. I mean, he's not going to get 2 games, get pulled. I mean, this is someone who will be starting if Matthew Stafford's back acts up or something happens to him. He will be starting. He could be in the Super Bowl as a quarterback this year. Of course, we don't want injuries to happen, but he was clearly a better option now than anyone they had on their roster and is the future. So to me, I would take him over just about anybody in the back half of round 1. I think the only exception I would make would be Eli Stowers, who I like a lot. I would take him potentially over Simpson unless I knew I needed a quarterback. And in Superflex, I kind of always need one.
For sure.
So,
yeah, I think betting on the franchise there might be just the way to go. Look at Brock Purdy. Yeah. Nobody wanted him as far as the NFL goes. And he went to a good franchise, went to a good coach, and it's turned out pretty well. So, yeah, I think maybe we are discounting not betting on those situations over, because some of the best prospects, Marvin Harrison, whether you still think he's good or not, but like one of the best prospects we've ever seen come out as wide receiver, it's not quite happening where it is, and it's going to a franchise that historically has issues. So,
yeah, another non-serious franchise. Well, Brian, this has been a lot of fun. Apologies again for my power outage in the middle of this, but thank you for hanging with me until I could get back online. Before we go, well, first of all, any sort of overarching thought for dynasty managers when it comes to looking at some of these cloudier situations where we're just not sure which guy, if we have to take one, who we want to take? What would be kind of your overarching advice for that?
Unfortunately, I feel like I answer a lot of dynasty questions starting off with this, but folks, I cannot overemphasize it enough. Know your league. Know how your league functions. Know how the other players in your leagues function. Know what they... I mean, I've been in some leagues where running backs are wildly taken, just so much earlier in drafts, and others people know, no, I'm going to wait. I'm going to take them appropriately where they are. So understand what your league is, how it functions. And then from there, take your shots. Take your shots on ambiguity. You're looking for some of these situations we talked about, the running back, the wide receiver rooms, because you're not going to go out and go grab 3 guys that are ranked in the top 15 at running back. That's not going to happen. Most teams don't have the capital to go pull that off. So what do? You want to go piece it together. Go back. I like looking at old playoffs in Dynasty. Go look at the final 4 teams in a playoff push. Go look at what they're starting. It's crap. It looks so bad. It's not going to be the prettiest of lineups, but you just need to set yourself up for the prettiest of situations. And maybe that's a scrub player, but he's got a great matchup those last few, whatever that is. So take shots. You have to take your shots. Otherwise, you're continually rebuilding forever, and you're just paying dues at that point and giving somebody else that opportunity. So take your shots, know your leagues, and if you're afraid to do both of those things, that's why you join multiple leagues. That's why you have multiple dynasty leagues. At any given, like I talked about, I got about 8 leagues. I've got 4 that are hardcore contending. I've got 2 that are full on rebuild, and 2, I got to figure something out in the next month. So give yourselves an opportunity to kind of lean in and play different ways, take different strategies, take different swings, but don't overdo it. Don't overdo it. Once you get in over a dozen, then you got to figure out how to shed those leagues, and that's sometimes a problem.
All right. Great advice, Ed. Brian, thanks so much for joining me today. Before you go, let the people know where they can find you and your excellent work.
Jeff, I can't thank you enough for having me on. This was so much fun. I appreciate just being on the show with you, talking ball. This was great. If you're looking for more of me, it's at @too_much_Brian on Twitter. Most of my stuff's rung up through there. I do have my show, Too Much Fantasy Football. You can find us there on Twitter again, the podcast, or also the YouTube feed. And look, folks, football, it's a long sport. It's a 12-month-a-year sport. Sometimes you need a little break. I got Too Much Movie Night over there where we do some fun drafts and movie checkouts as well. So, when over the top's not enough, you get Too Much Brian.
I don't think there is such a thing as Too Much Brian, so I do appreciate that. But I do appreciate also someone who is knowledgeable enough about themselves that they can call themselves Too Much Brian and be very, very comfortable with that. So thank you, Brian, for being here, and thank you all for watching or listening, especially if you held on this long. It means you are diehard Dynasty fans, or you really also don't think there's too much Brian. In which case, please do me the favor of liking and subscribing. If you're on YouTube, click the like, click the little bell there so you get updated when a new episode drops. If you're on Apple, the best thing you can do to help this show grow is leave a 5-star rating and a nice review for us. Your other platforms have similar sorts of things. Helping us there would be really helpful. And we will be back next week with another outstanding guest on Dynasty Compass.